The darkness of space stretched endlessly around the Zephyrian ship Luminous Dawn. Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge, his tall blue form reflecting the soft glow of the control panels. His species had explored the galaxy for 3,000 years, and they had never found anything they could not understand or control. "Admiral," called Navigation Officer Yelth from her station. "We are detecting something strange ahead." Kethvar moved to look at the main screen. A ship floated in the void, dark and silent. It looked unlike anything in their vast databases. Where Zephyrian ships were smooth and curved like flowing water, this vessel was all sharp angles and brutal lines. Scars covered its hull, telling stories of countless battles. "It appears dead," said Science Officer Morkan, studying his readings. "No power signatures, no life signs. But the design, Admiral, this is not from any known civilization." The alien ship was massive, easily twice the size of the Luminous Dawn. Its hull was a dark gray metal that seemed to swallow light. Strange symbols were painted along its sides, and weapon ports dotted its surface like the eyes of a sleeping beast. "Could this be from the species the scouts reported?" asked Yelth. "The ones who call themselves humans?" Kethvar nodded slowly. The Confederation had received scattered reports of a new species expanding into this region of space. The reports described them as primitive but aggressive, using crude chemical rockets and simple energy weapons. This ship, however, looked far more advanced than those early reports suggested. "Begin standard salvage procedures," Kethvar ordered. "We will tow it back to the research station. The scientists will want to study this." As the crew prepared, the tractor beam, something changed. The dead ship suddenly blazed with light. Energy readings spiked across every instrument on the bridge. The crew stumbled backward from their stations in shock. "Admiral," Morkan shouted over the noise of alarms. "The ship is not dead. It was hiding." On the main screen, the human vessel turned to face them. It moved with smooth, deadly grace despite its size. Lights ran along its hull in patterns that seemed almost like a heartbeat. The strange symbols began to glow with an inner fire. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Defiant," came a voice over their communication system. The words were translated by their computers, but the tone was clear, calm, professional, and completely unafraid. "You have approached a military vessel of the Terran Republic. State your intentions." Kethvar felt his confidence return. One ship against his fleet? The humans were either very brave or very foolish. "I am Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Confederation. Your ship appeared to be derelict. We were attempting to render assistance." There was a pause. "Negative, Admiral. We were conducting reconnaissance operations. Please maintain your current distance and we will avoid any misunderstandings." Kethvar's pride flared. These humans dared to give him orders? His species had been traveling the stars when most races were still learning to make fire. "Human vessel, you will submit to inspection. This sector falls under Confederation authority. Admiral," the human voice replied, still maddeningly calm. "I must advise you that we do not recognize Confederation authority over this region. Please withdraw to avoid an incident." The Zephyrian crew exchanged glances. The audacity of these creatures was incredible. Kethvar made his decision. "Prepare boarding shuttles. We will take this ship and its crew for questioning." The human captain's response came immediately. "Admiral, I strongly advise against that course of action." But Kethvar was no longer listening. The Confederation had never met a species that could stand against them. These humans would learn their place in the galactic order. 20 minutes later, the first Zephyrian shuttle attached to the human ship's hull. The boarding team was made up of the Confederation's finest warriors, equipped with the best armor and weapons their technology could provide. They cut through the hull with energy torches and dropped into the ship's corridors. What happened next would be studied by military historians for generations. The human ship's interior was dimly lit. With red emergency lighting, the corridors were narrow and functional, with no decoration or art. Everything was built for war, from the reinforced walls to the blast doors that could seal off sections in seconds. The Zephyrian boarding team moved carefully through the ship, their weapons ready. They had fought many battles and conquered many worlds. They expected frightened primitives hiding in the dark. Instead, they found hell. The humans were waiting for them, not cowering behind barriers or running in panic, but calmly positioned with military precision. The Zephyrians' advanced armor meant nothing against weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Their elite training crumbled against enemies, who moved like they had been born for war. The battle in the corridors lasted less than 10 minutes. When the shooting stopped, not a single human had been hurt. The surviving Zephyrians, there were only 3 out of 20, found themselves on their knees with human weapons pointed at their heads. "This is Security Chief Williams," came a voice over the communication system. "Boarding party neutralized, Captain. No casualties on our side." On the bridge of the luminous dawn, Admiral Kethvar stared at the reports coming from his boarding team in growing horror. His best soldiers, warriors who had never known defeat, had been crushed by what the humans casually called basic security personnel. "Admiral," Captain Chen's voice came over the radio again. "Your people are alive and unharmed. They will be returned to you shortly. I suggest we end this here before anyone gets seriously hurt." Kethvar felt something he had never experienced. In his long life, fear. Not just fear of death, but fear of the unknown. These humans fought like no species he had ever encountered. There was no rage, no excitement, no passion. They approached violence with the same calm efficiency they might use to repair a machine or file a report. The 3 surviving Zephyrians were sent back in their shuttle, along with their equipment and the bodies of their fallen comrades. They were not harmed, not tortured, not even questioned. The humans simply returned them like broken toys a child had finished playing with. As the luminous dawn retreated, Admiral Kethvar studied the recordings from his boarding team's suit cameras. He watched his warriors die with a growing sense of dread. The humans moved through combat like dancers following ancient steps. Every shot found its target. Every movement had purpose. They killed without hatred and showed mercy without weakness. "Admiral," whispered Science Officer Morkan, "what are these humans?" Kethvar did not answer. He was thinking about the captain's voice, calm, professional, almost bored. She had destroyed his boarding party like it was routine maintenance, and she had let him live to carry the message back to his people. That more than anything else terrified him. The human ship Defiant watched the Zephyrian vessel retreat into hyperspace. On her bridge, Captain Sarah Chen made a note in her log about the encounter. She classified it as a minor diplomatic incident and requested that command send a proper first contact team to establish relations with the Zephyrian Confederation. She had no way of knowing that she had just lit a fuse that would burn across the entire galaxy. The age of human isolation was about to end, and the universe would never be the same. Battle Commander Thexrim had built his reputation on crushing the dreams of lesser species. His fleet had brought order to 17 star systems and taught respect to countless civilizations that had forgotten their place in the galactic hierarchy. Now, as he studied the report from Admiral Kethvar, his forearms tensed with barely controlled fury. "These humans humiliated our forces," he growled to his staff officers gathered in the war room of his flagship Thunder of Justice. 20 elite warriors defeated by primitive barbarians. It is impossible. Commander Veltar, his tactical officer, shifted nervously. "Sir, Admiral Kethvar's record is beyond question. His reports have always been accurate." Thexrim's red eyes blazed. "Then explain to me how savages using chemical rockets managed to defeat Confederation Marines." He gestured at the holographic display showing the tactical data from the encounter. "Look at these readings. Their ship barely registers on our technology scales." The truth was simpler and more terrifying than Thexrim could imagine, but he was not ready to accept it. In his mind, the humans had gotten lucky. Perhaps they had stolen some advanced weapons, or maybe they had used some crude trick that would not work twice. "We will teach these humans the price of defying the Confederation," Thexrim declared. "Assemble the 3rd battle group, 12 heavy cruisers and our escort fighters. We will capture their ship and bring their leaders back in chains." 3 days later, The largest Zephyrian fleet in a generation dropped out of hyperspace near the edge of human territory. The Thunder of Justice led 11 other warships, each one capable of destroying an entire planet. Fighter squadrons buzzed around them like angry insects, their pilots eager for battle. "Sir," reported the sensor officer, "we have located the human vessel. It appears to be alone." On the main display, the human ship Defiant hung motionless in space. It looked even more primitive up close, its hull scarred and battered from countless battles. Compared to the sleek beauty of the Zephyrian fleet, it looked like a chunk of scrap metal. "One ship," Thexrim laughed. "They send one ship against 12. Their arrogance will be their downfall." He opened a communication channel to the human vessel. "Human ship, this is Battle Commander Thexrim of the Zephyrian Confederation Navy. You have attacked our forces and violated our territory. Surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded." The response came quickly. "This is Captain Sarah Chen. Commander, you are in violation of Terran space. I am ordering you to withdraw immediately." The same human from Kethvar's report. Thexrim smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Captain Chen, you are facing 12 warships with a single vessel. Surely even humans are not too primitive to understand mathematics." "I understand the numbers perfectly, Commander. I also understand that backup is en route. You have one chance to leave peacefully." Thexrim checked his tactical display. The nearest human systems were days away. No reinforcements would arrive in time to help this foolish captain. "You lie, human. Surrender now or we will take your ship by force." There was a pause that seemed to stretch forever. When Captain Chen spoke again, her voice carried a weight that made every Zephyrian on the bridge shiver. "Commander, I gave you a chance. Don't blame me for what happens next." The human ship began to move. What followed would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for centuries to come. The humans called it the 17-minute war, though most of the actual fighting was over in the first 5 minutes. The Defiant did not charge heroically toward the enemy fleet. It did not try to ram the biggest ship or go out in a blaze of glory. Instead, it began a careful, methodical dance of destruction that seemed almost choreographed. The first Zephyrian cruiser died when kinetic kill vehicles, simple chunks of dense metal accelerated to incredible speeds, tore through its shields and hull like they were made of paper. The crew had no time to scream before their ship broke apart. The second cruiser lasted longer, managing to fire several shots at the human vessel before plasma lances, beams of contained stellar fire, melted through its engine core. The explosion lit up space like a newborn star. Thexrim watched in growing horror as his fleet was systematically destroyed. The human ship moved like a predator, never staying in one place long enough for his gunners to get a clean shot. Its weapons fired with impossible accuracy, each shot carefully planned to cause maximum damage. "Return fire," Thexrim screamed. "All ships concentrate fire on that human vessel." His remaining ships tried to obey, but the human captain seemed to know where they would shoot before they did. The Defiant would be gone from a target zone just before the energy beams arrived, appearing somewhere else to deliver another killing blow. The human ship's computer system, what they called an AI, calculated firing solutions faster than any Zephyrian could think. It predicted enemy movements based on tiny changes in engine output and ship positioning. It was like fighting an opponent who could see the future. One by one, Thexrim's proud warships died. Some tried to ram the human vessel in desperate suicide attacks, only to watch their target slip away at the last second, while return fire crippled their engines. Others attempted to retreat, but found their hyperspace drives destroyed by precisely targeted shots. The fighter squadrons fared no better. Their small, fast ships should have been able to overwhelm a single larger vessel, but the human ship's defensive systems were unlike anything they had ever encountered. Point defense weapons tracked and destroyed incoming fighters with mechanical precision, while electronic warfare systems scrambled their targeting computers and communications. In 17 minutes, 11 Zephyrian warships were reduced to drifting wreckage and scattered debris. Only Thexrim's flagship remained, its engines dead and its weapons offline. "Sir, whispered his communications officer, his voice shaking with shock. "The human ship is hailing us." Captain Chen's voice filled the bridge once again. "Commander Thexrim, your fleet is disabled. I am prepared to accept your surrender." Thexrim stared at the tactical display, unable to believe what he was seeing. His entire battle group, the pride of the Confederation Navy, destroyed by a single human ship. His hands shook as he reached for the communication controls. We surrender," he managed to say. "Acknowledged. Do not attempt to restart your engines or bring weapons online. Rescue ships will arrive within 6 hours to evacuate your survivors. Any hostile action will result in the immediate destruction of your vessel." The communication channel closed, leaving Thexrim alone with his shock and shame. Around him, his surviving officers worked frantically to treat the wounded and repair critical life support systems. "Sir," his tactical officer said quietly, "I'm reading the human ship's energy signatures. They never went above 30% power during the entire battle." The words hit Thexrim like a physical blow. They had held back. During the complete destruction of his fleet, the humans had been taking it easy. If they had wanted to, they could have ended the battle in minutes instead of 17. As promised, human rescue ships arrived exactly 6 hours later. They were sleek, efficient vessels that made the Defiant look primitive by comparison. The rescue teams that boarded the Zephyrian survivors were professional and courteous, treating wounded enemies with the same care they would show their own people. Captain Chen herself came aboard the Thunder of Justice to speak with Thexrim. She was smaller than he had expected, a middle-aged human female with graying hair and calm eyes that seemed to see everything. "Commander," she said, "you attacked a military vessel in Terran space. Under normal circumstances, this would be considered an act of war." Thexrim felt his courage return slightly. "Then why do you treat us with mercy?" Chen smiled, and for a moment she looked almost sad. "Because, Commander, you didn't know what you were dealing with. Your people made a mistake based on incomplete information. Starting a war over a mistake would be wasteful." She turned to leave, then paused. "A word of advice, Commander. The next time you meet a human ship, remember this day. We prefer peace, but we are very, very good at war." As the human rescue teams evacuated the survivors, Thexrim realized that Captain Chen had given him the most valuable thing in the universe, a second chance. The question was whether his people would be wise enough to take it. The Grand Council chamber of the Zephyrian Confederation had never been so quiet. 300 representatives from across their empire sat in stunned silence as Battle Commander Thexrim finished his report. The holographic display above the central podium showed the tactical recordings of his fleet's destruction, 17 minutes of systematic annihilation that would haunt every military officer in the room for the rest of their lives. Supreme Chancellor Mordith, ancient even by Zephyrian standards, leaned forward in his ceremonial chair. His voice carried the weight of 3,000 years of civilization. "You are telling us, Commander, that a single primitive vessel destroyed 11 of our finest warships." Thexrim stood straighter despite the shame that burned in his chest. "Yes, Your Excellence. The human ship Defiant, commanded by Captain Sarah Chen, eliminated my entire battle group in 17 minutes and 12 seconds. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some delegates shook their heads in disbelief while others studied the tactical data with growing alarm. "Show us the analysis," ordered Chancellor Mordith. Chief Science Advisor Kelneth activated the detailed breakdown that their best minds had spent weeks preparing. The holographic display shifted to show weapon trajectories, energy readings, and movement patterns. "The humans used kinetic kill vehicles," Kelneth explained, her voice tight with professional fear. Simple chunks of dense metal accelerated to significant fractions of light speed. Our shields, designed to stop energy weapons, were useless against them. Admiral Vextar, the Confederation's highest-ranking military officer, studied the data with the eye of a career warrior. "These plasma lance weapons, they cut through our armor like it was not there. And this tactical computer system—" "Artificial intelligence," Thexrim supplied. "They call it an AI. It predicted our movements before we made them. It was like fighting an enemy who could read our minds. The chamber erupted in discussion. Artificial intelligence was theoretical, at best for most Confederation species. The idea that the primitive humans had not only created it but deployed it in combat was almost impossible to believe. "There is more," announced Dr. Yelsif, the Confederation's leading xenobiologist. She had spent the last month studying every scrap of data about human society that their scouts had gathered over the years. "We must understand what we are dealing with." The holographic display changed again, showing images of human worlds, cities, and cultural artifacts. What the assembled delegates saw made their blood run cold. "Humans do not simply fight wars," Dr. Yelsif began. "They have made warfare into an art form. Every aspect of their society, their entertainment, their games, their sports, even their children's toys, revolves around conflict and competition." She showed them images of human entertainment. Movies depicting massive space battles, games where children commanded armies, sports where teams fought for territory and dominance. Everything was competition. Everything was conflict. Everything was war. Their literature is filled with stories of warriors and battles. Their music celebrates both victory and heroic defeat. They study ancient military leaders the way we study philosophers. They teach strategy and tactics to their children as basic education. Admiral Vextar examined footage of human military exercises with the eye of a professional soldier. What he saw made him feel very old and very afraid. They train their warriors from birth. Look at this. Children barely old enough to walk playing games of tactical combat. It gets worse, Dr. Yelsif continued. Captain Chen, the human who destroyed Commander Thexarim's fleet, is not considered exceptional by their standards. Her military record rates her as competent but unremarkable. She commands what they classify as an older patrol vessel on routine reconnaissance duty. The silence that followed was deafening. If Captain Chen was unremarkable, and the Defiant was not even a frontline warship, what would happen when the humans sent their best? "How many ships do they have?" whispered Chancellor Mordeth. Dr. Yelsif consulted her notes. Conservative estimates suggest several thousand warships, with production capacity to build hundreds more each year. Their population exceeds 20 billion across dozens of worlds. Every single one of them has been raised in a culture that glorifies warfare. The implications hit the assembled delegates like a physical blow. They were not dealing with a normal civilization that occasionally went to war. They had encountered an entire species of warriors who had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing. "There is one more thing," Dr. Yelsif said quietly. "Commander Thexrim, you said the human captain showed you mercy. This is consistent with their military doctrine. They prefer their enemies alive and able to spread word of human capabilities." Admiral Vextar felt a chill run down his spine. "You mean they let us live on purpose to send a message?" "Exactly. Captain Chen could have destroyed Commander Thexrim's flagship in the first minutes of the battle. Instead, she disabled it and provided medical aid to the survivors. This was not compassion, it was psychological warfare." The Grand Council chamber fell into another long silence as the representatives absorbed this information. They had met many species in their 3,000 years of space travel. Some had been peaceful traders, others had been hostile conquerors, but they had never encountered anything like humanity. "What do we do?" asked Delegate Morven from the outer colonies. "How do we defend against an entire race of warriors?" Chancellor Mordeth looked older than his centuries. "We must warn the other civilizations, the Ethereal Collective, the Kronar Empire, the Trade Federation. They all must know what we have discovered." "Will they believe us?" asked Admiral Vextar. Thexrim stepped forward. "They will when they see the recordings. No one who watches these battles can doubt the truth." Dr. Yelsif activated one final display, a map of known space showing human territory as a small cluster of stars near the galactic rim. This is where they are now. A small collection of worlds that most civilizations have ignored. But they are expanding, and when they reach the major trade routes, the unspoken implication filled the chamber with dread. Humanity was like a wildfire that had started in a remote corner of the galaxy. For now, they were contained to their small region of space. But fires spread, and when this one reached the rest of civilization, nothing would ever be the same. "Send the emergency broadcast," Chancellor Mordeth ordered. "Priority 1 communication to all known civilizations. Include the tactical data, the cultural analysis, everything." As the council session ended and delegates hurried to contact their home worlds, one thought dominated every mind in the chamber. The galaxy had a new apex predator, and it was only a matter of time before everyone else became prey. The message that went out that day was simple but terrifying. Warning to all civilizations. New species designated human, encountered in Sector 7 Alpha. Extreme military capability demonstrated. Approach with utmost caution. Avoid hostile contact, at all costs. Within days, that message had spread to every corner of known space. The age of human isolation was ending, and the galaxy would never be the same. Some species would try to make contact and secure peace treaties. Others would form alliances against the human threat. A few would simply run. But they would all know the name that Battle Commander Thexarim had learned in 17 minutes of terror. Humanity, the species that had turned war itself into a science. The emergency message from the Zephyrian Confederation spread through the galactic communication networks like a virus. Within 72 hours, every major civilization had received the tactical recordings, cultural analysis, and terrifying warning about humanity. The reaction was immediate and profound. High Ethereal Zeslin of the Ethereal Collective had spent her 300-year lifespan dedicated to peace and harmony. Her people had not built a warship in over a millennium, preferring meditation and philosophical debate to violence. Now, as she watched the recording of the 17-minute war for the 5th time, her graceful hands trembled with unprecedented fear. "Summon the Defense Council," she ordered her aide, her melodic voice strained with emotion. "We must begin military preparations immediately." "Your Radiance," her aide whispered in shock. "The Collective has not had a Defense Council for 8 centuries. "Then create one," Zesalin replied, her ethereal features hardening with grim determination. "Contact our allies in the Peaceful Systems Alliance. Tell them the age of peace is ending." Across the galaxy, the Kronar Empire was having its own crisis of confidence. Warchief Grathak, whose species had conquered 40 star systems through brutal military might, stared at the tactical analysis with growing dread. His warriors were fierce, his ships were powerful, but the humans fought with a precision and efficiency that made his proudest victories look like children playing with toys. "Pull our fleets back from the contested borders," he ordered his generals. "All of them. Now." "Warchief," protested General Thuvran, "if we retreat from the Varian sector, we will appear weak. Our enemies are not the problem anymore," Grathak interrupted, gesturing at the holographic display showing human ship movements. "Look at these recordings. The humans destroyed 11 warships in 17 minutes. 11. Our best victory required 3 days to defeat 5 enemy vessels." He stood and paced the command center, his massive frame radiating anxiety that his subordinates had never seen before. "Send diplomatic envoys to all our border neighbors. Non-aggression. Pacts, trade agreements, anything to avoid conflict. We need to focus all our resources on preparing for the humans." "War Chief, surely you do not believe that one species could threaten the entire empire?" Grathak stopped pacing and fixed his general with a cold stare. "Watch the recording again." "Thuvran, count how many times the human ship could have destroyed the Zephyrian flagship but chose not to. They were playing with their enemies, playing. Now imagine what they could do if they were serious about winning." The Vorthan Trade Federation, masters of commerce and diplomacy, were perhaps the most practical in their response. Within hours of receiving the Zephyrian warning, they had rerouted all major trade routes to avoid human space. Emergency protocols were activated to secure alternate supply lines and establish buffer zones. Chairman Velthar called an emergency session of the Trade Council, his 3 arms gesturing rapidly as he spoke. "The humans represent both the greatest threat and the greatest opportunity in galactic history. We must be prepared for either possibility. How can they be an opportunity? Asked Trade Minister Kosovan. They are clearly a military threat. Because if we can establish peaceful trade relations with them, we will be the only civilization with access to their technology and resources. The profits could be enormous. But if we anger them, Velthar let the implication hang in the air. The Council immediately authorized the construction of the largest diplomatic fleet in Federation history. Every ship would be unarmed, painted in peaceful colors and loaded with gifts and trade goods. They would approach human space with flags of truce and hopes for profit. Meanwhile, smaller civilizations throughout the galaxy were making their own desperate preparations. The Aquatic Consortium began building underwater cities to hide their population from orbital bombardment. The Silicon-based collective started moving their industrial centers to asteroid fields where they would be harder to target. The Hive Mind collective went into complete communication silence, hoping that the humans would not notice them. Some species attempted to gather intelligence about humanity, sending long-range scouts to observe human worlds from a safe distance. What they found only increased their fear. Human space was bustling with activity. Massive industrial stations churned out new warships at an alarming rate. Military exercises involving hundreds of vessels were conducted regularly. Transport ships moved troops and supplies between worlds with the efficiency of a well-oiled machine. Most disturbing of all, the humans seemed completely unaware of the chaos they had caused. They continued their normal activities: exploration, colonization, trade, as if they had not just become the most feared species in the galaxy. Captain Sarah Chen, the human who had unknowingly triggered this galactic crisis, was back on patrol duty. Her ship, the Defiant, continued its routine reconnaissance missions along the edge of human space. She had filed her report about the 2 encounters with Zephyrian forces and requested that Command send diplomatic teams to establish formal relations. She had no idea that her name was now whispered in fear across 1,000 worlds. The human government, when it finally learned about the galactic reaction from intercepted alien communications, was baffled. President Martinez called an emergency meeting of the Defense Council to discuss the situation. "I don't understand," she said, reviewing the intelligence reports. Captain Chen followed standard protocols. She defended herself against hostile forces and showed mercy to the survivors. Why are they all so terrified? Admiral Thompson, the graying head of Human Defense Command, studied the alien communications with professional interest. "Madam President, I think they're afraid because we're good at what we do. Really good, maybe too good." "What do you mean?" "Look at these cultural analyses they're sharing about us. To them, we look like a species that lives for war. They see our entertainment, our sports, our military training, and they think we're all warriors." Defense Secretary Park nodded grimly. "They're not entirely wrong, Admiral. We do spend a lot of resources on military preparedness, and our cultural products do tend to focus on conflict and competition." President Martinez frowned. "But that's just human nature. We compete because it makes us better. We prepare for so we can avoid it. Don't they understand that?" "Apparently not, Madam President. To them, we look like an entire species of soldiers, and after what Captain Chen did to those Zephyrian fleets..." Admiral Thompson shook his head. "They think we're unstoppable." The irony was not lost on anyone in the room. Humanity had spent centuries dreaming of the day they would make contact with alien civilizations. They had imagined peaceful exchanges of knowledge, cultural understanding, and cooperation among the stars. Instead, their first real contact had terrified half the galaxy into preparing for war. "What's our response?" asked President Martinez. Admiral Thompson pulled up a star chart showing the movements of alien fleets throughout known space. Massive military buildups were visible near human borders. Diplomatic envoys were gathering in neutral systems. Some species were fleeing to the far rim of the galaxy. "We need to move carefully, Madam President. Any aggressive action on our part could trigger a galactic war. But if we appear weak, some of these species might decide to attack us before we become too powerful. So what do you recommend?" Admiral Thompson smiled grimly. "We do what Captain Chen did. We show them that we're reasonable people who prefer peace. but we make damn sure they know what will happen if they choose war instead. As humanity began to prepare for its formal entry onto the galactic stage, the rest of the galaxy held its collective breath. Some species sent peace envoys loaded with gifts and treaties. Others gathered their fleets for what they believed might be the last war in galactic history. But all of them knew that the universe had changed forever. The humans were coming and nothing would ever be the same. 5 years had passed since the Chen incident, as historians now called it, and the galaxy looked nothing like it had before. The massive conference hall on the neutral world of Haven Prime buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 300 civilizations gathered for the first Galactic Security Summit. At the center of it all sat Admiral Sarah Chen, former captain of the Defiant, trying to understand how a routine patrol mission had somehow made her the most famous human in the galaxy. The Galactic Security Summit had been years in the making. What started as the Human Monitoring Coalition, a loose alliance of terrified species sharing intelligence about human activities, had evolved into something far more complex. As the initial panic faded and no human invasion materialized, the galaxy's civilizations began to realize that humanity might be more opportunity than threat. Chancellor Mordeth of the Zephyrian Confederation, now elderly even by his species standards, stood to address the assembly. His voice carried across the vast chamber through translation devices that rendered his words into hundreds of different languages. 5 years ago, we made contact with humanity under unfortunate circumstances, he began, his eyes finding Admiral Chen in the human delegation. We expected primitives and found warriors. We sought easy conquest and discovered what it meant to fight beings who had turned warfare into an art form. A murmur ran through the assembled delegates. The Zephyrians had become the unlikely leaders of the galactic peace movement, their humbling encounter with humanity having taught them valuable lessons about assumptions and arrogance. But we also learned something else, Mordeth continued. We learned that humans, despite their incredible capacity for war, preferred peace. They could have conquered our worlds after defeating our fleets. Instead, they returned our dead with honor and offered to open diplomatic relations. High Ethereal Zesselin of the Ethereal Collective nodded her graceful head. Her people's forced militarization had been successful, but traumatic. They now possessed one of the largest defensive fleets in the galaxy, but it had cost them much of their peaceful philosophy. The humans have kept their word, she said, her melodic voice reaching every corner of the hall. They have not expanded aggressively. They have not demanded tribute or territory. They have simply existed. And in doing so, they have changed everything. War Chief Grathak of the Kronar Empire, whose species had retreated from their conquests to focus on human-proofing their military, spoke next. The collective is correct. The humans have not conquered us, but they have conquered war itself. Look around this chamber. When was the last time any of us fought each other? It was true. The galaxy had become paradoxically peaceful since humanity's emergence, with the specter of human military might looming over everyone. Smaller conflicts seemed pointless. Why waste resources fighting neighbors when humanity might notice and decide to restore order themselves? Trade had flourished as species focused on technological advancement rather than territorial expansion. Scientific cooperation had increased as civilizations shared research to better understand human technology. Even the most militant species had found themselves embracing diplomacy over warfare. Admiral Chen rose to address the assembly, still somewhat bewildered by her role in these historic events. She was a career military officer who had simply defended her ship when attacked, yet somehow she had become humanity's unofficial ambassador to the galaxy. I want to thank everyone for their patience as we've learned to navigate this new relationship between our species, she began. I know that first contact didn't go as smoothly as anyone would have liked. A few nervous chuckles rippled through the crowd. The human talent for understatement had become legendary among the galactic community. But I think we've all learned valuable lessons, Chen continued. Humanity values peace, but we prepare for war. We compete because it makes us stronger, but we cooperate because it makes everyone safer. We hope that the galaxy can find room for all of our different approaches to existence. Chairman Velthar of the Vorthon Trade Federation gestured enthusiastically. His people had indeed profited enormously from their early peace overtures to humanity. Human technology and resources had revolutionized galactic commerce. The humans have proven to be our most valuable trading partners, he announced. Their industrial capacity is unmatched. Their scientists are brilliant, and their philosophers offer perspectives we never considered. They have enriched not just our coffers, but our minds. Dr. Yelsif, the Zephyrian xenobiologist who had first analyzed human culture, presented her updated findings to the Assembly. Our understanding of humanity has evolved considerably over the past 5 years. While they are indeed a warrior species, they are also explorers, builders, artists, and dreamers. Their capacity for violence is matched only by their capacity for creation. The holographic displays showed human cities, art installations, scientific research stations, and cultural festivals. The galaxy had been so focused on human military might that many had missed their other achievements. Most importantly, Dr. Yelsif continued, we have learned that humans fight only when they must. They prefer to build rather than destroy, to explore rather than conquer, to trade rather than take. They are warriors, yes, but they are warriors in service of peace. Ambassador Telvar of the Distant Worlds Coalition spoke up from the far side of the chamber. Not all species have been as fortunate in their encounters with humanity as those represented here today. The Black Star Raiders found out what happens when you attack human civilian ships. The Void Cult discovered the consequences of targeting human colonies. A sobering silence fell over the Assembly. While most first contacts with humanity had ended peacefully, a few aggressive species had chosen to test human resolve. The results had been swift, decisive, and absolute. The Black Star Raiders no longer existed as a military force. The Void Cult had been reduced to scattered survivors hiding in remote systems. But even in those cases, Admiral Chen pointed out, humanity showed restraint. We could have eliminated those threats completely. Instead, we demonstrated overwhelming force once and then offered terms for surrender. Most of their populations survived and were allowed to rebuild under new leadership. President Martinez of the Terran Republic, appearing via hologram from Earth, addressed the Assembly directly. Humanity seeks partnership, not domination. We want to explore the galaxy, together, to learn from each other, to build something greater than any of us could achieve alone. The formal treaty that emerged from the Haven Prime Summit established the framework for what historians would later call the New Galactic Order. Humanity would be recognized as the ultimate guarantor of galactic peace, not through conquest or intimidation, but through the simple fact that no rational species would risk war knowing that humans might intervene. In return, humanity agreed to share certain technologies, provide protection for peaceful civilizations, and maintain open, diplomatic relations with all species willing to coexist peacefully. The Galactic Defense Doctrine, as it came to be known, was elegantly simple. Any species that attacked another would face potential human intervention. The mere possibility was enough to deter most conflicts before they started. As the summit concluded and delegates prepared to return to their homeworlds, Admiral Chen found herself surrounded by alien dignitaries wanting to shake hands, exchange gifts, or simply meet the human who had changed galactic history. "Admiral," asked a young Zephyrian journalist, "do you ever regret that first encounter with our forces? Do you wish things had happened differently?" Chen considered the question carefully. Around her, hundreds of species that had once viewed each other with suspicion were now working together on joint projects and shared goals. The galaxy was more peaceful than it had been in centuries. "No," she said finally. "I don't regret defending my ship and my crew. I don't regret showing mercy to survivors, and I certainly don't regret the galaxy we've all built together since then." As the delegates departed Haven Prime, they carried with them a new understanding of their place in the universe. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy through force of arms or economic dominance. They had conquered it through the simple demonstration that they were exactly what they appeared to be, a species capable of terrible war but devoted to lasting peace. The age of human isolation was over, The age of human leadership had begun, and for the first time in galactic history, that leadership was welcomed rather than feared, respected rather than resented. Admiral Sarah Chen, the woman who had started it all with a simple defense of her ship, looked out at the stars and smiled. The universe was vast and full of wonders, and now all of its children could explore it together in peace. The aftermath of humanity's emergence had indeed echoed through the universe, but it was not the echo of conquest or destruction. It was the echo of hope, the hope that even the most different species could find common ground among the stars.